So what's up people, and welcome to another episode of Comics, Animations, and Movies. So we're back to RWBY again, and in this episode I would like to talk about Jaune arc. Yes, Jaune arc, that comic relief in the series, the bumbling, lovable fool that everybody likes but nobody takes seriously, and the person who is considered to be the weakest character in the entire series. Now, as the series progressed and became more serious and darker, Jaune did become stronger, but he went mostly from a comic relief character to that of a sympathy play. And although he became stronger, he remained being more a support character than a lead character. And even his semblance, once unlocked, seemed to make other characters stronger rather than himself. At least that's what it looked like at the end of Volume 5. So then why this video, and why did I title it as Jaune being potentially OP? Well, that is because I feel the gods of Remnant, namely Miles, Luna, and Carrie Shawcross, left his abilities vague enough that they have the potential to make him very strong. And so to clarify this, let's take a look at Jaune's abilities. He has two unique abilities. First, he has a large amount of aura, as Pyrrha mentioned in episode 6 of the first volume. And second, his semblance is able to release that aura outwards, at least towards other characters, so that it strengthens their aura and in return strengthens them. Now once again, this sounds more like a supporting capability rather than a lead capability, and would be fitting of Jaune as his current supporting role. However, when you look at it, this has once again the potential to be very powerful for Jaune. And one starts realizing this first when they start looking at what aura can do to an individual. So we know that aura provides three basic capabilities to any character. First, it enhances their senses so that they have a much higher awareness of their surroundings. Second, it heals them of any injuries. And third, it provides protection, a shielding sort of energy, so that it basically protects them from any sort of attack. So aura is one of the key factors that differentiates a huntsman or a huntress from your average person, even if that person was to be something like a policeman or a military personnel. Now of course we know that Jaune has an abundant amount of aura. So depending upon how the writers move forward with this, Jaune has the potential to be able to supercharge all three of his capabilities that come with aura. We already know that he can enhance somebody's healing factor so high that they can go from a lethally wounded state to a fully healed state in a matter of minutes. And not only that, he can refill somebody's aura so high that they are fully charged to be able to use their semblance. We already saw that with Weiss. Now to compare, if we look at Pyrrha during episode 6 of volume 1, we saw that she took a small amount of aura only to unlock Jaune's aura, and this by itself was enough to make Pyrrha go dizzy. But in Jaune's case, he was perfectly fine after reviving and fully recharging Weiss. And so this indicates that since Pyrrha is one of the strongest characters in the RWBY series, yeah, Jaune has some pretty insane aura capabilities. And so unless the writers completely handicap Jaune, if Jaune has the ability to amplify other people's healing factors very high, then he should have an easier time amplifying his own healing factors. And so that makes Jaune a very difficult person to take down, because he basically can heal himself instantaneously. Furthermore, if Jaune has the ability to supercharge his healing capabilities as well as somebody else's semblance, then he should have no problem supercharging his other two abilities as well. So that will give Jaune an incredible amount of heightened awareness or sensory perception, as well as a very impenetrable shielding force field around his body. And to see the power of these potential capabilities, all one has to do is take a look at other comic series. So for example, just take Marvel. The enhanced healing factors will be something like Wolverine or Deadpool. the armor capabilities, the body armor capabilities will be something similar to Colossus, and the heightened sensory perception will be something like Spider-Man's spider senses. So can you imagine one character who has the regenerative capabilities of Wolverine, has body hardened armor just like Colossus, and Spider-Man's spidey senses? So the potential of these three capabilities alone can make Jaune a formidable warrior. If he ever gets his fighting skills and his aura control up to par, then he will become somewhat unstrikable, similar to Spider-Man because of his heightened senses. And when he does get struck, he will be impenetrable, similar to Colossus. And if he ever does get injured, he'll be able to heal right away, just like Wolverine. And other examples of characters who have similar powers are someone like Leone in Akame ga Kill with her heightened healing factors, and of course the armament and observation haki that Luffy has in One Piece. And considering how formidable those two characters are, you could see the potential that Jaune may have. And this by itself is already enough to make Jaune a formidable character. However, this doesn't even include his semblance. So let's bring in his semblance. From what we can tell at this time, it's really vague, but what it seems like is he has aura projection. He could project his aura out and at a minimum amplify everybody else's aura. So what does that mean? Well, basically, the heightened healing factors, the heightened sensory perception, and the heightened body armor can be transferred to anybody else by amplifying their aura. Basically, by supercharging it beyond what the character is capable of. And we already saw an example of that when Jaune revived Weiss from an almost near-death experience to that of being fully recovered in a matter of minutes. And I don't think Weiss alone could be able to do that even if her aura was fully charged. I think it requires a supercharged, amplified aura capability that Jaune provides to be able to take a critical blow like that or a critical injury and immediately restore it back to full health. And so if Jaune can do that with the healing factors, then I would assume that he could also do that with their sensory perception as well as their body armor capabilities. So can you imagine Team Junior where Nora, Ren, and Jaune himself all have enhanced healing capabilities, all have enhanced sensory capabilities, and all have enhanced body armor capabilities? That would make Team Junior basically one of the strongest teams right now in Remnant. Now what we don't know is whether Jaune can also supercharge everybody's semblance. We do know that he can fully charge character's semblance because he did that with Weiss. However, this was Jaune's first attempt at his semblance, and we all know that semblance becomes far stronger as you practice. So if he could already fully charge somebody's semblance with his first try, you could imagine that with practice he would be able to supercharge their semblance. And can you imagine if he could do that? I mean, RWBY will be able to run like Quicksilver in the Marvel Comics. Nora and Yang will become like She-Hulks. And basically Ren will be able to not only make his presence disappear, but maybe he will be able to make a whole town disappear from the Grimm's notice. That would be incredible. Can you imagine if they were to rescue a town from a Grimm attack and all Jaune had to do was supercharge Ren, and then Ren shot out his semblance so that the entire town disappeared from the Grimm's notice, and then the Grimm were like, I don't even know why we're attacking when there's nothing here, and they go back to their lair. That way they don't even have to fight to save the town from the Grimm's attack. It will be one of those powers that will become very handy if Jaune and Ren were available when the team needed to infiltrate Salem's lair. I mean, can you imagine if Ren through Jaune's amplification can keep the entire team invisible to all their enemies while they infiltrated Salem's lair? I mean, that would be pretty cool. Anyway, this is all just speculation, and now I will go to the final part of what I feel makes Jaune potentially seriously OP. Okay, so since we don't know really too much about Jaun's semblance, there's a potential that he could do a lot more than just amplify people. So one possibility is, for example, what if he can also amplify inanimate objects, namely weapons? So if he can charge weapons and make them a stronger version of themselves, then he could, for example, take his sword and turn it into something that will be similar to a lightsaber. What it would be is basically taking his armament capabilities that comes with the aura and putting it onto his sword so that his sword not only becomes harder, but it also can create a sharper edge through the aura. And by doing so, he might be able to create a sword that has unlimited cutting potential and can slice through most anything. He could also do that with his shield, basically being able to stop anything through his shield. And if he shield bashes with his armored shield or aura shield, he will be able to destroy anything in its path. Then his very kind of feeble weapons that we have seen up till now can become extremely powerful. We have seen examples of this in other comics, such as in Hunter x Hunter, where people would take their Nen power and be able to put it into inanimate objects so that they will become far more powerful than they were. Something as simple as even a volleyball will become a fairly deadly object once Nen was placed into it. And Jaune, if he could do the same thing with Zara, could turn simple objects, even something as simple as a piece of paper, into a very deadly weapon. This by itself will be extremely formidable, but it will pale in comparison to his next power. So we know that Jaun's semblance is aura projection. He could basically project the aura to amplify everybody else's aura. Well, what if his aura projection not only can project the energy so that it amplifies other people's aura, but it could also project the physical capabilities of the aura, namely the healing factor, the heightened sensory perception, or the body armor. So let's keep it simple and focus just down on the body armor. What if Jaune can project out his body armor? In this way, he could protect a group of people around him with his aura armor. I will call it aura armor in this case because he's projecting it out. That way he could actually, save and protect a group of people who are not huntsmen or huntresses and don't have the ability to protect themselves by wrapping them and surrounding them with his aura armor. But it goes even further than that. What if he can then manipulate the aura so that it basically forms a shape? Basically something like a box or a cup. All he has to do is shape the planes of the aura armor so that they kind of fold with each other to form a box, and use that box to basically hold on to objects such as rocks or spears or whatever is lying around on the ground, and then he could use it to pick them up. That would be basically a form of telekinesis. Other comics such as, once again, Hunter x Hunter has shown that through the bubblegum capability that Hisoka has. So if he can do that, and if he can manipulate items that are basically around him, used by surrounding them with his aura armor and then picking it up with that, then he could basically start utilizing telekinesis powers. I mean, that would be pretty incredible. He would basically be able to do everything that Penny was able to do at that point. On top of that, if he can project his aura out so that it potentially diverted, not only blocked but diverted somebody's attack so that it went some other direction, then he could do everything that Pyrrha did, only Pyrrha required metallic objects for her to be able to push it away using her kind of aura push. But in Jaune's case, he would be able to do it with even non-magnetic material because of the fact that it's not magnetism, it's not polarity that is doing it, it's basically his shield aura that's projecting outwards. And here is this kind of scary part that you could get if he actually can do these sorts of powers. What if he could actually then basically create a solid wall, like a box, around this person and then start enclosing the walls inwards? Basically, that will be Gaara's sand coffin minus the sand. He wouldn't even need the sand that Gaara used to create the sand coffin. And as scary and as terrifying as the sand coffin was, if Jaune can actually do that, that would be seriously, dementedly powerful. And in fact, an example of that is shown in the comic The Rising of the Shield Hero, where the main character Naofumi, the Shield Hero, creates a power, a terrifying power called the Iron Maiden, where he uses his shields to create again a container with spiked walls, and then he puts his adversaries into that container and literally tears them apart. Yeah, Shield Hero, right. Okay, well, in any case, you know, I'm not sure if Jaune will ever be able to do that, but if he could, well, that will make him pretty powerful, basically leagues above what he is right now. Finally, if he could take his armored powers and be able to focus it into a small volume and then project it out at high velocities, then he could basically turn his armored capability into a projectile. And of course, we've seen that in other comics. Probably the most famous is the Kamehameha power in Dragon Ball, but you also have seen it as the ray gun power in Yu Yu Hakusho. So if, again, Jaune can do that, then that will make Jaune significantly powerful than what he is today, and possibly can make him one of the most powerful characters in the RWBY universe. And so finally, all this depends on the word potential. He has the potential to be able to do a lot of this because his aura capabilities and his aura quantity has been kept very vague so that the writer can do whatever they want, but it will all depend upon how the writers want to proceed. For example, with aura quantity, if you look at other comics, you could see a large degree of differences in the aura quantity. Aura has gone by other names in other forms of fiction. For example, in many RPG games, it's gone by the name of mana. In Naruto, it's gone by the name of chakra. In Dragon Ball, it's called ki. In Hunter x Hunter, it's called nen. And of course, in Star Wars, it's called the Force. But overall, it's basically a similar sort of physical entity. And so if you look at many of these comics or fictions, you see that the degree of aura or mana or chakra or whatever you want to call it varies by the character. So in the low end, you might have somebody like Gon from Hunter x Hunter, or Luffy from One Piece, who has a lower level of this inner power. Yes, it's still large compared to the average person, but compared to some of these other beings that we see in other comics, it's relatively lower. In the mid-level, I would say arguably so. You will have somebody like Naruto, who has the chakra powers from the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox, and that gives him a significant increase in chakra energy, and that might be a very good example to compare with what Jaune has. Now in the ultra high end, you have somebody like Goku, who seems to be able to go infinite numbers of Super Saiyan transformations to go as far as he wants, and he seems to be unstoppable in how far he climbs up. You also have somebody like Ryan in the Korean manhwa autophagy regulation, where he has the ability to tap into the Sea of Life. Again, in that comic, all of the physical entities, the living entities, get their energy from the Sea of Life. They receive energy from that when they're born, and they give back the energy to that when they die. And Ryan has the ability to tap into that entire energy, and because of that, he has the ability to become seriously strong. But Ryan might be a good example of what Jaune is. He has the potential to become really powerful, and whenever he does tap into the sea, then literally the gods in that comic have a hard time fighting against him. But oftentimes he just can't even tap into any of that energy, and then he becomes a normal human being, and then he gets beat up relatively easily. Jaune seems to be in that sort of category where the reason why up till now he hasn't been able to take advantage of any of his heightened aura capabilities or his semblance is because he hasn't been able to tap into it. He just physically doesn't have the skills to do so, and that's why he gets beat up by somebody like Cardin Winchester. Well, if he can actually tap into his aura and be able to take advantage of it, he literally may be able to destroy Cardin Winchester without even lifting a finger. And that would be seriously scary. Any case, well, what I wanted to do was talk about this because I thought that it was quite curious, and it will be interesting to see where the authors take or the writers take Jaune in the future. I think they have something stored for him or prepared for him in the future because of the fact that they have treated him quite special. Despite his lack of any obvious skill, he was accepted into Beacon, and you know that Ozpin knew that this guy was faking his transcripts and didn't have the skills, and yet not only was he accepted into Beacon, Ozpin actually made him the leader of Team Juniper. And considering that Juniper consisted of Ren, Nora, and Pyrrha, who were leagues higher in skill than Jaune, there must have been something that Ozpin saw in Jaune that would potentially make him leader material. So I got a feeling that the writers, through Ozpin, has an interesting future in store for Jaune. And that will be quite interesting to the story, although I kind of don't want Jaune to become that powerful, at least that quickly. One of the things that makes Jaune so admirable is his sheer determination. Sometimes he has it harder than others to learn things, but his sheer determination is what makes him so unique and so interesting. And if he gets all these powers right away, then that will kind of defeat his character. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to Jaune in the future. Anyway, that's about it for this video. If you have any comments, please post them in the comment section below. Tell me what you think you feel about what Jaune's role is in this story. In any case, I'll continue to make more videos on comics, animations, and movies in the future, and I hope you join me at that time. And until then, happy comic book reading, happy anime watching, happy movie watching, and of course, Jaya, nice day, everyone.